Hi, welcome to DrumWise Meets. Today I'm here with a drummer who's worked with the likes of David Bowie, Soul Asylum, Duran, the B52s and Cyndi Lauper. This is DrumWise Meets Sterling Campbell. Hi Sterling.
Hello, how are you?
My first question for you today, Sterling, what age did you get into drums? And when you first started playing, what bands or artists inspired you?
It's a weird question. It's hard to say because I started banging on things first. You know, I didn't even unfortunately my mom passed away like a couple of months ago. And I don't know if I've ever even asked her, like, why did you buy me drums? I don't even know actually why she bought me drums. She bought it so, but I did bang on a lot of things. I would say that was around 1975, like, and I was 11 years old, where I was like banging on things. So really around 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
I come from a family of 6 boys. I was the youngest of 6. And my brothers and my family in general were music lovers. My brothers obviously had a pretty wide palette of stuff they listened to. I mean, mostly I grew up in a Black neighborhood, so most of it was R&B that people listened to. But my brothers brought in Elton John and Chicago and stuff that wasn't like typical normal music people in my neighborhood were listening to. And so hearing Chicago bands like Chicago and the drummer Danny Seraphine and Elton John, because it was so different from everything, I gravitated, like, there was just because it sounded different what they were doing. Those were some of my, and all the James Brown drummers, and actually got to see James Brown in 1974 when he was still in his prime. Yeah.
Awesome. No, that's cool. And we're going to come on to actual like drummer influences in a sec. But you talked about when you first started, you were just banging on things. Talk to us about your first drum set, and and like your first proper drum set, and what it was, and if you still have it.
Yeah. No, I don't still have it, but it was a Christmas gift. My mother bought me a set of drums. I had no idea that's what I was getting. Like I like I said, I never really asked her, like, was I asking you for drums? Was I saying, get me a set of drums? Or because I don't remember me ever asking her for it,
Yeah.
But, and I don't have that drum kit anymore. I wish I did. I think it was like a Telstar. It was like a Japanese drum kit or something like that. And I remember she wouldn't let me play it the day I got it. It was Christmas and it made a lot of noise, and she just kept me away from it the whole day. I was so annoyed, and I just had this longing, want to bang on them. And I'm left-handed, so I set up right-handed because I thought that was the way you set up, because rarely did you see on television a left-hand drummer.
The reason that I'm laughing and smiling about that, and even more so after the left-handed thing, it's exactly the same for me. I got a drum kit for Christmas. I wasn't allowed to play it on Christmas Day, and I'm left-handed and on a right-handed kit. Again, I knew no different. Everybody I'd seen had always set up that way around. So, yeah, so I have the same experience there. And while we're talking about equipment, then, in a normal world when you're out playing or recording, or what is your main equipment setup these days?
I'm with DW, and the last touring I've been doing was with the B52s. So I just had a 22. I use a snare drum as a tom on like the first tom, and a floor tom. I don't go around the toms a lot. So with the B52s, it's pretty much kick snare. And every once in a while I'll fill.
Yeah.
But you're really pretty simple setup.
Yeah, cool.
Two Zildjian, I like Zildjian K crashes at 19 and 18, and I forgot I was using the Constantinople ride.
Hmm. Excellent. And while we're talking about gear, if we go like back a while to maybe like the Bowie days or something like that, can you remember, what your setup was there?
I had a couple of setups. I had like a standard like 5-piece kit. During that time I was using a GMS, and I started originally with like a 5-piece kit, like 12, 13, 14, 22-inch kit. And then I started getting custom made stuff made. So I was starting to use this little 10-inch snare. They made me these octobons.
Mm.
Um, and I had like a regular tom and a floor tom. I was just trying stuff out. Sometimes I do it really honestly, just I'm bored and let me hit something different, like make a different sound. A lot of it's that.
Awesome. Good stuff. Now, I said that we were going to come back to drumming influences. This is the one. And some people have found this one really tough to answer. Others have gone immediately to their answer. I'm not here to make your life easy. So I like the tough questions. So I would find this one hard to answer myself. If you had to pick just one, who would be your all-time favorite drummer?
Well, I'm gonna go with Dennis Davis because he was the one that got me going, and he was able to, I think what I loved about going to see him the first time, talking about like a first impression, is seeing him with David and the fact that it was so many different things he was doing within the music, because David's music was like that. And so yeah, I kind of modeled things around Dennis.
Mm. I love that. That's a nice answer. And then if we elaborate a bit more, talk to us about other big influences of yours. If I wasn't just narrowing it down to one.
I would definitely say Stuart Copeland. Um, I have to say my friends like Zach, Charlie Drayton, Steve Jordan. Um, in the 80s, man, there was so many amazing drummers, especially coming from Europe. I love Steve Jansen from Japan. I love Mel Gaynor from Simple Minds.
Hmm.
Um, I love Chris France from Talking Heads. And then the classic. I mean, I love Charlie Watts. I saw Gad. I mean, I got to see a lot of people in their prime. So I got to see Gad. I got to see Peter Erskine. I mean, I can just, that was why that period of time was just so amazing, and to see these guys at the top of their game. I saw Bill Bruford with King Crimson. Really innovative people, like really, it's just too many, there's
Yeah.
just too many drummers, freaking Lenny White, Billy Cobham, like going for days.
Mm. I think it's good to have that list as well because people that watch these, there might be one name that stands out and they go, "Oh, hang on, I don't know that guy," and then it opens their eyes to someone new. Um, so another one here that might be a tough one. What's been the highlight of your career so far?
I mean, definitely like the Bowie thing because of the whole, there's a whole story behind that, and going to see him in '78 and then end up playing with him, I would probably say is definitely the highlight. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a hard one to beat, really. Now, from career highlights to possibly the other end of the scale here, have you ever had anything go wrong on stage that you've had to recover from that you can tell us about? And I mean here like brain fails or gear fails or both.
I can't say there's this one moment where, there's been many times where mistakes were made and, and just you recover from them, but nothing like where people would like, hey, what was that? What happened there? because I would probably most likely play it off.
Yeah.
I was good at that, pretending like, yeah, wait, what was that?
And we have to be, and this is something I talk to my students about all the time. You know, when you make a mistake, being able to keep going, and not like when people are early on in drums, they make that mistake and they go, oh no, stop the music, you know, stop. And obviously that's kind of where this question's come from, because I want students to realize that obviously that's not the way to do it when you're you know, at the pro end of the scale.
I would pretend to like be fixing something while I'm playing, you know, just like this, it's, you know, yeah, something happened, and I've done that.
Exactly. So now a question about learning new material. When you first get a gig with a new artist, how do you learn the songs? So just a few examples here. Do you just listen to the, you know, are you sent the tracks and you just listen to them and you just take it in and that's it? Or do you listen and transcribe? Or has it ever happened where you've been given a whole like pack of music and they've said, here's the whole show written out in this folder for you?
Well, I mean, this is this is an issue of age. When I was younger, I mean, the landscape was completely different. You know, I started playing in the early 80s, and you know, just my enthusiasm, I was able to get into like multiple bands. So you know, I got to the point where I had to learn stuff, you know, on the spot. So I got used to it. You know, I'm not a reader at all. You know, I learned music by listening to records, and got to the point where I'm listening to even like really complex jazz fusion records, and I just knew everything that was going on in the record. So I got like whatever that was, and that translated in the same thing, making recordings and playing with bands, to the point where I was just really quick. Now, I can't do that. It totally freaks me out. So I'll do stuff like, and it really depends. It really depends on the project, but I would usually take stuff into Ableton and then just break it down and chop up bits in Ableton, and like, you know, put markers on, okay, if I need to work on the verse, so that, okay, that's weird how he's getting into the verse, and I'll just loop that, you know, using technology. That's
Yeah.
But I used to do it all by, I mean, there's been moments I remember working with Cameo, and this is around 87, and I got a, you know, this last minute call, they needed the drummer, 2 days to learn it, to go out on like the second leg of their tour. I get in and it's the first 17 songs all segue into each other. And they all have different time, different tempos. And every segue was like one blah. You know, it was like, it was crazy. And I had 2 days to learn it all.
Whoa.
And I did it all by just like memory.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
I don't even know, like, I wish how, whatever well that I was going down, what I was able to do that in 2 days. And it was like, you know, yeah, it was like 24. It was a 24 song set. It was crazy. And like the first 17 songs, there was no break.
Were you on a click? Did you at least have that as a reference? No. Wow. Oh.
And I wasn't even using my own drum kit. It was like part electronic, and it wasn't like, it was crazy. I don't know how I did it, you know, but I couldn't do anything like that now.
And for people that, because I definitely have students that I know find it difficult to learn stuff by ear. They rely on having it, you know, on written out on the screen. How do you think that's something that you developed? You know, I mean, I know what your answer is going to be, but if you just like talk to us about how you worked on that skill of learning by ear.
Well, once again, like the landscape was different. And could you imagine being in high school and you're playing in all these different bands? You know, I mean, one part of it was also just like that enthusiasm, like, oh shoot, I'm making music. And it's like this, forget the internet and forget all, there was a lot to do.
Mm.
You know, there was a lot going on. There was places to play. There was actually this place to literally go out and play, and there was bands, and it was just the beginning of drum machines, so people needed a drummer.
Mm.
You know, so that made a huge difference. You know, there was a lot going on, and I think you know, because I started thinking about this more, like when I saw David Bowie in 1978, and when I knew, you know, I knew the drummer, I saw the 80s in a sense. He's always been like a step ahead.
Mm.
So I got like a little intel, like, oh shoot, this is kind of what's gonna come, you know? Even I didn't know it at the time, but like my mind worked, like after I saw that, it was almost like Spotify. Well, if you like this, you like this. You'll like, there wasn't that, but I went to look for that, whatever that was, you know. So I would go into record stores and quote crate dig and just look for music that had that taste to it. And I don't think anybody else was doing that at the time. So the 80s came, and basically the 80s were like, you know, this new sound, and a lot of it was coming out of England.
Mm.
And I already felt like I was already in it. So I think I might have gotten a lot of work because I was looking for stuff in that, besides playing R&B and, you know, whether traditional rock, or I had to play punk, and, you know, there was noise rock. There was all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, I'm trying to paint the picture of what New York was like in the early 80s, because everything was converging at one time. You know, hip hop was just starting to make its way into place. Now you have post punk, you still got punk. There's places like CBGBs. Like this is stuff you would look at on Netflix now.
Mm.
And this was the playground for myself, for Zach, for Charlie Drayton, you know. And so there's, you know, you can just go and walk off. Hey, Steve Gadd's playing tonight. Where you can just kind of walk into something. Elvin Jones is playing tonight. It was like that. It was that crazy,
Yeah.
you know, and there was so much going on. So, you know, if you're enthused about music, I think, you know, especially, you know, like people go on and they spend time on YouTube and watching all this stuff. It was pretty much live YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of describing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can interact with it. And it's now in hindsight, it's history.
Mm.
It's like, oh man, what was like, no, this is like, you just like, hey, what are you doing? Oh shoot, what's the name's playing tonight at, you know, 7th Avenue South? You can walk in and see like Jaco Pastorius and Pat Metheny playing at the same time,
Mm.
jamming. If you, any kids today, and you were kind of put into that place, of course, people be incredibly enthusiastic,
Mm.
you know?
It's interesting because even just you saying that, I mean, I was born in the 80s, and so I was really listening to music, you know, in the 90s. And just you say, you know, it's history now. You know, I was talking to a student the other day about a tape, you know, a cassette tape, and they were like, "What?"
Mhm.
You could like, yeah, the younger guys today, obviously Spotify, YouTube. YouTube wasn't around when I first started learning, so it's such a different place, isn't it?
It's I mean, I don't know, like now that time has gone on, you spent a bit of time on this planet, and you know, time moves on, and just like how things work then and how things work now, you know. And it's really interesting, you know. It's so different. That long, you know, even like you said, the cassette, you had to like rewind the cassette. There's like a certain longing to it all, you
Yeah.
know. Nothing happened instantly. So that made, I don't know, that made things like, to get there.
Mm.
Like I remember being in a band, and we were trying to record our first demo on a 4-track cassette player. That's on somebody's phone now,
Yeah.
you know? And just like that enthusiasm just to get to that place,
Mm.
you know. And I don't know how that plays in to music, but for me, it was huge
Mm.
in terms of like pushing forward. And you know, you didn't kind of take things for granted, and you know, and you had to work we had to work pretty hard.
Mm. Now, moving away from drums for a sec and onto a couple of curveball questions for you. First one of those is, what are your hobbies away from drums?
I never really had like a lot of hobbies, but I really I like computers. I like DAWs. I like plugins. I like just purely almost to the point of like, wow, a new paintbrush today, something to tinker with. I like tech. I've always liked technology. I started off liking technology, just the idea of lights on a keyboard.
Mm.
Like it was like that naive. It just looked. I used to buy albums because they just look cool,
Mm.
and they ended up and turn out to be just as good. Which was amazing to get the art direction and the music to go with it. Um,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I went off a tangent, but like, yeah, I mean, it's just like I like anything music, anything that makes noise, you know, and then try to apply it to what you're doing and try to, make it have I mean, I try to be really practical. Okay, I play drums, here's a song. How am I gonna make these people move? And that's learning from the best of the best. That's watching David, like, it's really a very pragmatic thing. It's like them getting to the point.
Yeah.
I play drums. Okay, even to feel like, how can I make, even recording, what can I do to bring this into the chorus? And how can I make it get out? Maybe I won't play. Maybe I'll stop playing for a second because I've been playing. Sometimes it's like taking little chances. And honestly, that I did that. You mentioned the band Soul Asylum. I came into the 80s and to the 90s, and a lot of people don't understand. That was like a rug being pulled out for anybody who was in the 80s.
Mm.
The landscape changed dramatically and nobody saw it coming. Like nobody saw Nirvana. Nobody saw like what, Nirvana was going to do. And it just changed everything. And I went, ruh-roh, uh-oh, like, how am I going to fit into this? I've been playing with like, Duran, they're like, and funny enough, and kudos to Duran, they got into the 90s. They did an amazing record and got themselves into the 90s. So
Mm.
that's a lot to be said. But anyway, I came into like where there's this thing called alternative music, and I'm like, what's that? And I got a call from Soul Asylum to do their record. And yeah, it was a whole nother different thing. But I remember recording with them, and I went into the session. I didn't know like technically what I was supposed to be doing. It's alternative music, and it's kind of I played, and it's just like like kind of a shrug like that. Is that cool? Is that um and did little things. Like I said, like we were doing this track called Runaway Train, which became like their classic hit.
Mm.
And I was playing the song, and then I decided, what if I don't play the snare and the hi-hat and just play the kick drum? I'll take, how people mute parts and stuff like, okay, I'm gonna not play the, and I know it's like really simple, but it really worked for the song.
Yeah.
And that's a musical thing that drummers would do. Sometimes you do stuff and you can see if it floats with the producer, and like unfortunately I didn't get that. Hey, why'd you stop playing? It wasn't like that. It was like, oh, that's cool. So like drummers, drummers are arrangers. So think like one.
Yeah.
Think for the song.
And you talked about technology. Just a side question here. What's your DAW of choice then? Because you said you like that side of things. What's your go-to DAW?
Well, my go-to now, like obviously Pro Tools is really good because it's industry standard. So you go and, but for creating, it's definitely Ableton
Mm.
for me.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty versed in Reasons, and I'm pretty versed in Studio One, and I can get around in Logic too. But for some reason, Ableton, just workflow wise, is just
Mm.
something about it that I just find so musical to do stuff and get to. And I'm really into apps. I'm really into like the iPad world. That's like a whole nother, you know, it's a whole nother space to be in and to make music in.
Now, second curveball question. This is the most anticipated question of this interview series. Everyone's waiting for this question. So, and it's not a question you'll be expecting me to ask if you haven't, unless you've seen some of these before. So, what's your favorite cookie?
I'm not going to say chocolate chip. They've been doing these confetti cookies, the cake battery kind of cookies that I like.
Oh, they sound good.
I don't know about over there, but over here, there's like, they make confetti birthday cake kind of cookies. Or
when you say confetti, what like lots of colors?
Like little like rainbow sprinkles.
Okay.
I don't eat cookies a lot. Actually, I shouldn't say that. But I like kind of vanilla Oreos, you know.
Yeah.
Not chocolate, but vanilla Oreo-y kind of cookies.
I don't know if we can get vanilla Oreos over here. I've never seen.
Out of business, export, since, you know, touring is slowed down.
Exactly. And the second part to that question is, if you had your confetti cookie or your vanilla Oreo, would you take your cookie and dunk it?
In what?
Well, you can answer that. Coffee, tea, milk.
I don't usually dunk cookies, man. You never tell an American. No, I'm joking. But I would probably dunk it in tea because I used to live in England, so
yeah,
I miss my tea.
Is it true that you can't get like PG tips and stuff in the US?
But there was just something about like the whole thing. Hey, would you like some tea? And just the way it was made, it was I can't ever. My tea would never do it. There seemed to be a skill about it, and it had to be English.
My tip, I watched the program and it was a case of, they said there's an optimum time to leave the tea bag in, and people that, pour it, squeeze it, take it out immediately, no way, you're not getting all of the antioxidants and stuff from the tea bag. So I think the optimum time is like 4.5 minutes to leave it in.
I believe it, but I'm not going to use my timer.
No.
But all I know is that I just have incredibly fond memories about it because, it was like I'm sure, like, especially back in the day when the English saw America and like they saw it as this place of this wonderment, at a certain point, because a lot of people didn't travel and had that the way people can travel today. A lot of people didn't have that. So like people saw America and all the stuff coming out of America, Hollywood, and it was definitely at its apex with like whatever it was being exported, whether it was Motown. I had that same feeling about England. I had this just romantic feeling about it, And then when I got over there and I spent a lot of time and just the life of it, I just have just the most amazing fond memories. And the tea break and somebody, hey, would you like some tea? And then getting that tea. It's just I could never get that taste. I tried to do it. I have PG tips. There's just something about it. Maybe it's the milk.
Well, I think, yeah. When I've traveled around, I've actually taken like PG tips with me from here, and it hasn't tasted the same. I think the milk has a massive
and water. Because I know like New York pizza like this, I think there's something in the water. The water is definitely different. New York water is different. And I think the mixing of water and dough, that's what I think.
Yeah. And I wonder, just as a side note here, you might know this, the PG tips, are they actually exported from the UK to the US, or do they make them in the US?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to investigate that.
Because yeah, if they're made in the US, then that would be another reason. Maybe the ingredients be slightly different. Anyway,
Oil.
yeah. See, and you thought this interview was going to be about drums. And back to drums for my final question. Now, I know you said that you started quite young, but let's still go with a question about your younger self here. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, so, around the time you started playing drums or taking them seriously, what would that advice be?
Things are so different in how the music business is different. I went down like so many crazy rabbit holes, because everything just like it's not wouldn't be normal, but like literally I would just like, what's this? I'm in Duran. What's this? I'm in Soul Asylum. So, I'm in like I'm in a boy band technically, literally just going like, just kind of like, wandering into something, and all this stuff happened while I was in Duran. And then that went into another thing, and I met all these other people and blah, 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 blah. I got to meet Nile Rodgers. Nile Rodgers was producer. He ended up working with Bowie, blah, 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 blah. And then the B52s and all these things that happened, and all what was going on at the time, all the debauchery, all of that stuff. And I just, if going back to what I would say, I would just like, watch out. Watch out, I don't know if that could take place now. I think everything's like super different in corporate, and like people have very limited tolerance for that kind of stuff. You can get away with a lot of stuff. Thank goodness there weren't the cameras. Like seriously, because like everybody's like, oh, you can make a thing out of it, but there was crazy stuff we were doing. I was doing. I'm not safe to speak for everybody, but I witnessed a lot of crazy stuff, and avoided a lot of bad stuff, but it could have gone horribly wrong. It went wrong, but it could have gone horribly wrong. And you see in the history of musicians and everything, I went into it very, like, yeah, I want to be a musician, and then I want to be a rock star, and then, it could go wrong, and it has for a lot of people. So I would think, out of all the things I would say, is like just to be careful, because it's but I don't know if that is applicable. And yet I think it is applicable, because you can become a jerk. I've seen a lot of that happen. It can mess, and I say that with, it can mess you up. You can get, honestly, it was almost like 0 to 60. 1 minute, and I'm playing hard, I'm playing in all these bands, and never really made, I made this and this, here's $50, here's, like really like nothing. And all of a sudden, like, okay, some guy comes to see me play with the band one night, and it's like, hey, listen, Cyndi Lauper is looking for a drummer. And she wasn't even on my radar. Like how naive I was, like, so I went into it like, yeah, whatever, yeah, Cyndi Lauper. The girls just want to have on, I didn't realize how great Cyndi was. But I ended up getting the gig, and it just went on all these crazy directions, And I went in with like, yeah, I want to be a drummer, I didn't do anything, I didn't have any vices, like, yeah, this enthusiasm, and I consider myself a pretty nice guy, but you can go down some. It was crazy. You see those movies, it's like Netflix crazy. I've witnessed, I've been in like you see the Motley Crue movie. I don't think it can go down that route anymore. I think it might have reached its course of like that level of debauchery. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe not, or maybe it just shifted courses and moved into the dance music spectrum, with DJs, maybe, I don't know. I'm not a DJ. I'm not around that stuff, but I would definitely, but I would just say though, people can fill your head up with stuff, and you can start believing it. I know it sounds cliche, but you definitely try to stay humble if stuff starts to happen, and because even the things around you, like, it can get like, you can be in a waters of sharks and things, and you really need to like listen to what people are saying and really observe things, because I know it's like I've been hit with disappointment. You think everything's fine and everything's not fine, and that could still happen. And I think those are important things, because like people can be smiling and yeah, and then you can be doing things and you think I just did all this for you, and this is not coming out of bitterness, honestly, even though I've been down that road, because you think you're doing the right thing. And I mean, I just saw some article today about like, a lot of artists are screaming and about Spotify and all this stuff. You figure like, hey, I'm doing this stuff, I'm doing all this song, how come I'm still living with my mom's house? And somebody's cashing in on my work and my hard work, and that's the music business in a lot of ways, and having, you have to have that strength in yourself to like, it could go there, and to be able to get up and continue to do, what it is that you set out to do. Because it's really hard to make a career out of this now, more than ever. So, be really focused on like what it is you do, and especially with drums, it's like, do what's right for the song. Like really, the idea is like you coming in to please people. Because there's a good feeling at that. Like you like, woo, you put your guns back in your pocket. Yeah, good. You liked it? Good. You're happy? Good. Don't make it self-serving. Sorry, that was a long.
No, it's great. There's so much good stuff there, and I love the things you were saying. So that's perfect. Really good. So Sterling, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.